Prince Harry's US visa status is in the spotlight over questions about his past drug use. A Freedom of Information request to release his immigration records is being heard this week. So, could this jeopardize his new life in America? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Prince Harry was triumphant last month, winning a landmark settlement and an apology from a British newspaper publisher over intrusion into his life. But in America, there are questions over his legitimacy to stay in the country and demands for his visa application to be made public. So, with Donald Trump now in charge, could Harry face deportation?
Claiming a monumental victory, Prince Harry's long-running battle with the British press and Rupert Murdoch's newsgroup newspapers has been settled. An apology and admission of serious intrusion into his private life by the Sun newspaper between 1996 and 2011. But media interest in the Duke of Sussex and his family has not ended there.
As a direct result of him taking a stand, Prince Harry and his immediate family have also had to repeatedly withstand aggressive and vengeful coverage since starting his claim over 5 years ago. This has created serious concerns for the security of him and his family.
Press intrusion was one of the reasons the Sussexes left royal duties behind for a new life in America in 2020. But with a new president in charge, does Harry have a future in the US? Donald Trump has been vocal in the past about not protecting Harry. He respected and praised the late Queen Elizabeth II and felt her grandson had betrayed her by leaving his royal duties behind. How then will a court hearing over Harry's visa play out this week, the first under Trump's presidency? Right-wing think tank the Heritage Foundation wants the US government to release the prince's immigration documents under the Freedom of Information Act. They believe he must have lied on his visa application over his drug use or been given preferential treatment. In his memoir, Spare, Harry admitted using drugs, something the US asks visa applicants to declare.
Without a doubt, I think there is legitimate and very strong interest in whether or not Harry lied on his application. And I do think the American public has a right to know what he put down with regard to his drug use.
The Sussexes appear to have settled into their new life in California.
Let's go.
They immediately landed a $100 million deal with Netflix. But the release of Meghan's latest project, a cooking show called With Love, Meghan, has been delayed due to the devastating wildfires in LA. During this time, the couple supported survivors and responders, helping out and donating money through their Archwell Foundation. But they were also accused of using the disaster to garner publicity. More criticism has followed with a scathing article by Vanity Fair. It portrayed Meghan as a difficult employer, saying Harry had made few friends in Montecito. The couple's move to the US was meant to offer them freedom, but they continue to face challenges. With Harry's visa under scrutiny, will his American dream survive under a Trump 0.2 presidency?
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining me here in the studio is the royal editor, Sarah Hewson, and Melissa Chavin is an American immigration and visa attorney. From London, we have Kelsey Farish. She is a media and entertainment lawyer. And from Columbus in Georgia in the United States, we have Clayton Cartwright. He's a US lawyer specializing in tax and immigration matters. Sarah, Prince Harry was searingly honest in that autobiography, Spare. Do you think he's regretting that honesty now with so much being brought back to use against him?
Well, the Heritage Foundation has certainly used Harry's words in Spare against him in this case. Harry detailed in Spare his use of illegal substances on multiple occasions and in multiple places, including Courtney Cox's mansion, and got a lot of headlines for it. And the Heritage Foundation has then taken this case against the Department for Homeland Security, trying to establish whether or not Prince Harry was given an easy ride when it came to his immigration records. Did he either lie on his visa application form, or was a blind eye turned to it because of who he is?
Melissa, how big a problem is this for Harry now, and what do we know about his actual visa?
So in general, they don't actually vet for just plain drug use. As you can imagine, many, many people use drugs. So they do vet for law enforcement brushes, including UK cautions and arrests and also convictions. But we don't think that Harry has any of those. So in terms of that, I don't think he was dishonest on any application. But then I also have opinions about his visa, that it was a very high-level diplomatic visa called an A1 head of state visa. Now, this visa does not require that he be working as a royal or representing his country. He just has to be fifth in line to the throne, which he is, and as long as the UK Foreign Service, UK Foreign Ministry says this is someone that we would like to have this head of state visa, then the US Foreign Ministry, the US State Department says, yes, he may have that visa. And the only thing that they vet is espionage, national security risk, or counter to foreign policy.
Clayton, so if he does have a head of state visa, even though he is clearly not a head of state, if he does have this A1 visa, he's pretty much untouchable.
Well, from a tax perspective, the A1 visa is the holy grail of U.S. tax planning for an individual who's not a permanent resident or a citizen of the United States. Most countries of the world, the United States included, consider someone tax resident and therefore taxable on their worldwide income, subject to disclosure on their worldwide assets, based upon physical presence, days of presence in that country. And the United States is no different. Its test is, every country has a different test. But in this case, if you're on an A1 visa, those days don't count. Statutorily, you don't have to count the days. So he is forever, if he's on an A1 visa, he's forever tax non-resident in the United States. Even if he proclaims to the world that the United States is his forever and ever home, he will still be considered non-resident for tax purposes if he's on an A1 visa, which means that not only is he subject to tax only on his U.S. source income, which he does have, but also it keeps his foreign assets and his foreign ownership interests, including any connections to royal trust, free and clear of U.S. disclosure. So not only does he have a vested interest in staying on an A1 visa, but the royal family does as well. So for the two of them, the two sides, so to speak, Harry, if he's on an A1 visa, the Duke of Sussex is on an A1 visa, he's in good stead. And the royal family is protected as well because he's not forced on a U.S. tax return to record any interest he has and any ownership interest of any royal trust that are sitting out there, including a bequest that was made to him this past autumn.
Kelsey, tell me, do you think that the campaign against Harry and all this information being demanded about his visa status and his application, do you think it's politically motivated? I mean, what do we know about this Heritage Foundation?
I do think that it's possibly politically motivated. The Heritage Foundation is a political lobbying group in the United States. It tends to lean fairly right. It has the support of Donald Trump, our now new president, returning president. And interestingly, I've actually read that Donald Trump is not the biggest fan of Harry. You might know that Donald Trump is a fan of the royal family, generally speaking. He was very excited to visit the late Queen. He has golf courses in Scotland. His own mother is Scottish. But he considers that Harry really was disloyal to the royal family. So it's arguable that perhaps the Heritage Foundation is using this as an opportunity to kind of flex its muscles and say, hey, if you're not completely honest with us and if you do things that we don't like, maybe if they're not illegal as such, we're going to take a cold, hard look into your background. Whether it's fair or not, I can't say.
Sarah, his name has been brought up, President Trump.
Yes.
So the UK government, there are rumours in Westminster that there could be a state visit and that Keir Starmer will go to Washington, D.C. This is a very special relationship for both sides. How does President Trump play into all of this then, given that we know he was a huge fan of the late Queen and he's not that big a fan of Harry?
Well, firstly, in terms of the UK and the relationship with President Trump, Keir Starmer's government has got a bit of making up to do over less than flattering comments made by some of his senior ministers. And that's where the king comes in and is effectively the trump card, if you excuse the pun, because we know Donald Trump is a big fan of the royal family. He also loves the red carpet being rolled out. So for Britain to invite him on a state visit, that would be seen as a big coup. Now, it's probably more likely in the next year that he will come here on a working visit rather than an official state visit. He'll still be welcome to Windsor Castle because Buckingham Palace is undergoing significant refurbishment at the moment. So all of those official visits will take place at Windsor Castle. But that would certainly be diplomatically very appealing to the British government and to President Trump. As for Harry and what the Trump presidency means for him, he had said in the past, in the election campaign, that he wasn't going to protect Harry. He'll be on his own if it's down to me, he said, because as Kelsey said, he said that he had betrayed the Queen and that was the late Queen and that was unforgivable. We'll get the first test of that this week because it is back up in court, the Heritage Foundation appealing against the decision that was made in September of last year that this wasn't in the public interest to release his Homeland Security records. And so we'll see how that plays under the new Trump administration.
Melissa, so much talk about deportations and immigrants and migrants in the United States, but on the face of it, Harry is surely the kind of person any country would want. Independently wealthy, very successful, high profile, clean record. What's the problem?
I don't think that there will be a problem. I think it would cause a big foreign policy issue if the UK government and UK foreign ministry was saying this is a person who deserves diplomatic status, and Trump said to his foreign ministry, the US State Department, that no, we're not going to take this person. Then it's going to cause a conflict, a big diplomatic fight, I think.
Clayton, to you on that point, I mean, Harry's like a dream arrival, isn't he, into Montecito? And we read so much about Montecito now in the British newspapers. Everyone knows where it is. I mean, he's your ideal client, isn't he?
I'm not sure about the ideal client, and now I know where Montecito is, or at least better. I better know where Montecito is. But, I mean, in terms of, the situation, I think the royal family is really the pivot point here. I think President Trump will do, or I shouldn't say do, but he'll take signals from the royal family in this regard. And so if right now the royal family is protected by A1 visa status, at least from a disclosure standpoint, I say that with one caveat. The two children that Harry and Meghan have, Archie and Lilibet, are U.S. citizens. And so if there's disclosure that is being required because they are U.S. citizens and because in the United States, U.S. citizens are U.S. tax residents regardless of wherever in the world they live, if there's disclosure coming out there and the royal family says, well, perhaps we're not getting any more privacy anymore from Harry's A1 visa status, maybe they say to the president, he's all, not that he's all yours, but we're not protecting him anymore. And then I think then it's all gloves off for the president. Otherwise, if the royal family says, we want him to stay on A1 visa status, my view is he stays on A1 visa status.
Kelsey, to you, just give us a flavour of how Americans see Harry and Meghan, because quite often in the UK, a lot of the newspaper coverage, they're right-wing newspapers. Harry and Meghan pretty much have sued every one of them, so you can see that a lot of the coverage gets skewed over here. What does the average American think of Prince Harry living in California?
people in California, very different from New York, Texas, and everywhere in between. But as a general rule, I would say that while there's a fascination with royalty, you have to remember that the story of America is all about breaking free from that hierarchy, from that old school tradition, right? And so when Harry and Meghan did the same and went off to California to start again and have a new chapter in their life and do it their own way effectively, I think there was a lot of respect and compassion and maybe even empathy for them, because people, I'm sure, can relate to having an older brother that you don't get on with, or whatever the case may be. But now things are starting to change because a lot of Americans are quite confused, rightly or wrongly, by the fact that Meghan and Harry seem to be courting publicity. And I'm sure we'll get onto that later, but there's this tension between wanting privacy and not liking newspapers invading your private life, and then having your own shows on Netflix and, making jam with your friends for all the world to see. These are complex issues, but I would say that many Americans don't think that you should be able to have your cake and eat it too.
Sarah, he likes a battle, Harry, in court, and he's had a big win recently against one of the very prominent newspapers here.
Yes, this was against News Group newspaper, the parent company of the Sun newspaper and formerly of the News of the World. And this was described by Harry's lawyer as a monumental victory. But what surprised everybody watching it was that it didn't reach court. At the 11th hour, a settlement was reached, and that settlement believed to be between 10 and 20 million pounds in damages for Harry and his co-claimant, Tom Watson, who was former deputy leader of the Labour Party here. And it was described as a monumental victory by Harry's lawyers because for the very first time, News Group newspapers admitted to unlawful activities at the Sun newspaper, its flagship newspaper. And they gave a full, unmitigated apology to Prince Harry for serious intrusion into his private life, and most significantly as well for Harry, into the life of his mother, the late Princess Diana. And so I think that will have gone a long way to him, but he had always said he wasn't going to settle. This wasn't about the money. This was about accountability and getting his day in court. And where it stopped short for Harry was that he didn't manage to get that accountability on what he claimed was a cover-up by those at the highest level.
And just tell me, he has another ongoing battle about security in the UK, doesn't he, when he travels home?
Yeah, there's two more cases outstanding for Prince Harry. In April of this year, he is due back in court, and this is his case against the Home Office over the removal of his full security provision that was downgraded when he stepped down as a working royal in 2020. He's fighting to get that reinstated because he says, as the son of the king, that he should have that full security, that automatic right to police protection when he's in the UK, and that it's not safe for him to return with his family. The other case still outstanding, you mentioned that other legal battles. He has a case against the Associated Newspapers, the Mail on Sunday. That is due to come to court in January of next year, so still some time to run on that. At the moment, no talk of any settlement on that, but the costs estimated to be around £38 million. And in the last week, judges have said that's just completely out of control and have asked them to pull back on that.
These are astronomical figures. Melissa, to you, how likely do you think it is that we will eventually see the public being made privy to all of his visa applications, all that information, or is this just going to be kept in the background and we'll never see it?
I don't know the answer to that question. I do think that this is a politically motivated case, similar to what Kelsey said. I think Heritage Foundation stated that they are governance watchdog. They are checking to see whether the Democrats had made, under the Democratic regime, they made a decision about Harry that was the wrong decision.
Yes, so their suspicion.
Whether he was given special treatment under the Biden administration.
Yes.
And
That's
I suppose
the suspicion.
that's why the next hearing is significant. Will we see a shift under Trump?
Yeah. Let's bring in Clayton again. Clayton, do you think he was given special treatment under Joe Biden?
No, from a tax perspective, and I'm speaking on tax matters, the answer is no. I mean, here, Melissa can speak to whether or not, his A1 head of state visa, as his time in the United States started to advance and he was starting to be involved in Netflix deals and other ventures, if you will, in the United States, whether that jeopardized or was not appropriate for his A1 visa status. That's an immigration issue. From a tax perspective, I mean, his records are confidential. I mean, that goes back to the days of Watergate and Richard Nixon there in the enemies list that Nixon had. In going even further, more recently with issues that the Republicans were claiming concerning bias against, in the United States against, right-leaning nonprofit organizations. So there's a long history and a statutory background foundation in keeping those records private. And so the privacy, he has not received any special treatment whatsoever. I mean, I think we'll know if the day comes and you see him in a naturalization ceremony. But frankly, if he does that, Melissa, I don't think it would even qualify because he would have to renounce his claim to the throne. I think the mere fact that he's a royal and fifth in line on the throne would disqualify him from naturalization.
Thanks, Clayton. Kelsey, give us an impression of how their content on various different streaming services is being received in the United States. Meghan has material out on Netflix. There's a Polo documentary as well. Are Americans genuinely interested in this kind of stuff?
So I kind of laugh because I have read the reviews for the Polo documentary. They haven't been great, I'm afraid. I'm going to go back to the point that I made about this tension or this dichotomy that we have between incredibly privileged individuals. I don't for a moment want to say that either Meghan or Harry have had a very easy life, okay, but they've still been very privileged in a lot of respects. And I think that for many Americans for whom, the economy is weighing heavily on them, this idea that you could have effectively a prince, a duke and a duchess come and kind of tout their privilege, whether it's, again, making jam on Netflix or having a Polo documentary about how difficult life is when you're involved in one of the world's most, prestigious, expensive sports to engage in. Again, I think that many Americans are not super keen on that. I would say, however, that even if you don't like an individual, you might want to watch them on television. You might enjoy watching content that is laughably bad, for example. I'm not saying their content is, but I'm saying that it gets viewers engaged and it's something to talk about. And as they say, sometimes even bad publicity is better than no publicity at all.
Sarah, you and I have worked in the media together for a long time. They get a lot of publicity, Harry and Meghan, and a lot of it is not good. Do you think there's an agenda here really kind of driving things against them? Because on the face of it, they're two very decent human beings. I saw them go to the fires in LA.
I was going to use that as an example.
And they got absolutely crucified.
Yes. So that's a prime example of damned if they do and damned if they don't. They went to the wildfires in their home state of California. They went and worked in a food kitchen. Now, that food kitchen is a charitable organisation that they've been supporting for many years through their Archwell Foundation. The accusation was that they were disaster tourists, that they'd turned up for the photo opportunity. But what would have been said about them if they'd just sat there in their Montecito mansion telling other people, well, you should help and you should open up your home to people and whatever, and hadn't gone there? They've subsequently been back again. Harry's been to meet firefighters, for example. They've been back again. That is the kind of work they would have been doing as members of the royal family. It is the work they want to continue to do. They wanted to have a reset this year. Meghan with her new series, With Love, Meghan, Harry. Yes, he's got his cases, but we were going to see a lot more philanthropy and a lot more of his charitable work. We've got the Invictus Games coming up this month as well. But it's been difficult. They've had that bruising coverage about the wildfires. There was the 8,000-word piece in Vanity Fair, which was far from flattering for them. So I think it's been difficult. But the Invictus Games might just redress the balance again.
Clayton, final point to you. I mean, Harry's got this, if we believe he's got an A1 visa, you called it the holy grail for tax purposes. There's no incentive for him to come back home to the United Kingdom, is there?
No, well, I mean, he can stay on the A1 visa and do whatever he wants to, wherever he wants to around the world. And so, I mean, he's has the same presumably the same tax status in the UK, and with the US, he's only taxable on US source income. So, I mean, it's not even the question of incentives; it's just a question of freedom. He has pretty much the ultimate freedom here in terms of. In terms of his travel, in terms of his tax planning, he has a lot of freedom.
Kelsey, just tell me, you can't see them moving back to the UK. I mean, it's Montecito or bust now, isn't it? They've got to stick it out.
I think that's probably right. I say this as a US-British dual citizen who's lived here for 13 years here in London. It's sometimes difficult to step back once you've made a decision to leave, right? And I think that their brand is probably better suited in the United States, that's for sure. But as I was saying just a second ago, if we know anything about Donald Trump, it's that he's unpredictable. So best of luck to Harry and Meghan in the months and years ahead.
Thank you, Kelsey, Clayton, Melissa, and Sarah as well. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me and to Brady and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.